Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, I'm Anggani. Good morning, all my dear friends. Welcome back to the Research in English Language Education class. And today we're going to have a presentation entitled Ethnographic Designs. And I'm Ilma Alina. I will be responsible for hosting today's presentation. And I will be also the first presenter. And next, please. And for the next presenter is Miss Tri Amalia. And then for the third presenter is Miss Afifa Abdul Regiane. And then the last presenter is Miss Litani Ika Budiarti. And to make time, let's go to contents of today's presentation. The first is all about the definition of ethnographic designs, and then the next one is types of ethnographic design, and then the third one is key characteristic of ethnographic design, and then the last one we're going to talk about ethical issues, steps of ethnographic design, and the last we will be conclusion. Now, for the first presenter, Miss Ilma Thomas. Time, and now I'm going to talk about ethnography by the definition. Next, please. The term ethnography literally means writing about groups of people. Using this qualitative design, you can identify a group of people, study them in their homes or workplace, note how they behave, think and talk, and develop a general portrait of the group. And this chapter also defines ethnographic research, identifies when you use it, assesses the key characteristic of it, and reviews key ethical issues, also advances the steps in conducting and evaluating this design. Next, please. Then, the definition of ethnographic design itself is a qualitative research procedures for describing, analyzing, and interpreting a culture-sharing group's shared patterns of behavior, beliefs, and language that develop over time. And central to this definition is culture. A culture is everything having to do with human behavior and belief. It is stated by Lecomte Rizal in Test in 1993, page 5, and it can be concluded that language, rituals, economic, political structures, life stages, interactions, and communication styles are included in ethnographic designs. And to understand the patterns of culture sharing group, the ethnographer typically spends considerable time in the field interviewing, observing, and gathering documents about the group to understand their culture sharing, behaviors, beliefs, and language. Next slide, please. Then, when do you conduct an ethnography? The first, the study of a group provides understanding of a larger issues, and then the second one, you have a culture sharing group to study, one that has been together for some time and has developed shared values, beliefs, and language. And there are three things related to the culture sharing group study itself. The first is all about the rules of behavior, such as the informal relationships among teachers who congregate at favorite places to socialize. And it is based on Pajak and Blaise in 1984. And then the second one, the culture sharing group may be narrowly framed, for example, teachers, students, or staff members, and broadly framed, for example, entire schools and their success, innovation, or violence. And the last one, long-term access to a culture sharing group so that you can build a detailed record of their behaviors and beliefs over time. The next one, please. And then how did ethnographic research develop? The first period, the roots of educational ethnography lie in cultural anthropology, and it is explained that the late 19th and early 20th centuries, anthropologists explored primitive cultures by visiting other countries and becoming immersed in their societies for extensive periods of time. And then the second, under sociologists at the University of Chicago in the 1920s through 1980s, and it is broadly explained that research focused on the importance of studying a single case, whether that case was individual, a group, a neighborhood, or a larger cultural unit. And then the third period of the development of the ethnography design itself, that the invent interdisciplinary area of educational anthropology began to crystallize during 1950s and continued to develop through 1980s. It is based on Lecomte again and in 1993. And then the last one is from the 1980s to the present time now, anthropologists and educational anthropologists have identified techniques for focusing on a cultural group, conducting observations, analyzing data, and writing up research. For example, Fatiman 2010 and Walker 1992, 1994, and then the last in 2008. That's all my presentation and brief presentation related to the definition of the ethnographic itself. And then for the next topic will be presented by Miss Fitri. Please, time is yours.
Okay, Miss Ilma, thank you for the chance. So now we are going to talk about the types of ethnographic designs. We have three types here according to Creswell. The first we have the realist ethnography. The second is the case study. The third one is the critical ethnography. So the first one is the realist ethnography. Here, the definition is a realist ethnography is an objective account of the situations, typically written in the third-person point of view, reporting objectively on the information learned from participants at all field sites. Next, okay, so the characteristic of this type, first is it is an objective, scientifically written ethnography. Second, narrates the study in the third-person voice, reporting what is observed or fact. And the third one is research reports objective data free from personal bias, judgment, and or goals. And the last one is researchers produce the participants' views through closely edited quotes and has final words on interpretation. For examples, according to Walcott 1974, use a realist approach to ethnography to study the activities of committee appointed to select a principal. This study addressed the process a school selections committee experienced as they interviewed candidates. Next, please. Okay, the second type is case study ethnography. Here, a case study is an in-depth exploration of a bounded system. For example, activity, events, process, or individuals based on extensive data collection. It is according to Creswell 2007. And then the characteristic of the case study is the first one, a single individual, several individuals, separate or in a group, a program, events or activities. Second, be selected because it's unusual. The third is represents a process consisting of a series of steps that form a sequence of activities. The fourth is the researchers develops understanding of the case by collecting multiple forms of data. The last one is researchers look at the case or cases within their larger context. For example, of a case study is the researcher by course 1991 of 4 school students who have reading disabilities. The study examines what factors contributed to the development of reading disability in adolescence. Now, we talk about the last type of ethnography designs is the critical ethnography. The critical ethnographies are types of ethnographic research in which the author is interested in advocating for the freedom of groups marginalized in our society, according to Thomas 1993. So the characteristics, the first, studies involve social issues of power, empowerment, inequality, inequity, dominance, repressions, hegemony, and victimizations. The second, used to advocate for the emancipations of marginalized groups. The third is seeks to advocate for change to help transform society. And the fourth is critical ethnography, self-conscious, reflexive, and self-aware. The last one is critical ethnographers actively collaborate, participate, negotiated with participants. For example, the critical ethnographic study of one principal's inclusive elementary school, according to case Hanley Maxwell and Chapter 1999, illustrated many of these features. The overall purpose was to describe and define the role of administrative leadership in an inclusive school for students with a high incidence of disability classification. For example, cognitive, emotional learning, and speech and languages. I think that's all from me. I will give back for moderator. Thank you.
What a great explanation, Miss Fitri. So now go on to the next presenter, Miss Afifah. Time is yours.
Thank you, Miss Ilma, for the challenge. Okay, so the next is key characteristic of ethnographic design. There are 7 characteristics of it. The first one is cultural themes. The second one is a culture sharing group. The third one is shared patterns of behavior, belief, and language. And then the fourth one is field work. The fifth one, description, themes, and interpretations, and then context or settings. And the last one is researcher reflexivity. Next, please. Okay, let's talk about the first characteristic, which is cultural themes. A cultural theme in ethnography is a general position, declared or implied, that is openly approved or promoted in a society or group. As with all qualitative studies, it becomes a broad lens that researchers use when they initially enter a field to study a group, and they look for manifestations of it. Next, please. Okay, thank you. And then where can we find this theme? This theme can be found in introductory texts in cultural anthropology. For example, the first one is according to Persistent in Distinct Education course. It's from Caroline in 1993. And then the second one is the coming out stage of gay identity development, according to Roth in 1997. The third one is development of student social skills in Japan, according to Lee Tendre in 1999. And then the last one is enculturation in an early childhood program among the Marians in New Zealand, according to Burmeister in 1998. Next, please. And then the second characteristic is a culture sharing group. In ethnography, is two or more individuals who have shared behaviors, belief, and language. Groups such as these typically possess certain characteristics. Next, please. For example, the first one is 47 students in a distinct education course in resource management and environment subjects, according to Kurland in 1993. And then the second one is 16 elementary education students teachers, according to Goodman and Adler in 1985. And then the third one and the last one is 40 college students in an organization who had identified themselves as either gay or bisexual, according to Roach in 1997. Next, please. Okay, we can see in here is a table of a study of a culture sharing group in a third grade elementary classroom. It's an example of the second characteristic. And here, a group might vary in size, but the individuals in the group need to meet on a regular basis and interact over a period of time, for example, more than 2 weeks up to 4 months, to develop shared patterns of behaving, thinking, or talking. The group is often representative of a larger group, such as a reading group with a third grade classroom. Next, please. And then the third one is shared patterns of behavior, belief, and language. A shared pattern in ethnography is a common social interaction that stabilize as tactic rules and expectations of the group, according to Spindler and Spindler in 1992. The characteristic of a shared pattern is first, the culture sharing group needs to have adopted shared patterns that the ethnographer can discern. And then the second one is the group shares any one or a combination of behaviors, belief, and language. Next, please. Okay, and then a behavior is an ethnography is an action taken by an individual in a cultural setting. For example, according to Walcott in 1974 and 1994, studied how a principal's selection committee act as they deliberated about selecting a candidate. And then the second one is a belief. In an ethnography is how an individual thinks about or perceives things in a cultural setting. For example, according to Bandula and Miller in 1999, found that women, doctoral students in psychology shared the concept that they were not able to invest much energy in their families. And then language in an ethnography is how an individual talks to others in a cultural setting. And a study of life history narrative of two African American women, Nelson in 1990, analyzed code switching or changing from standard English to Black English vernacular. For example, used the representative parallel clause structure found in Black church tradition when she said, "It is pain, suffering, determination, and perseverance." Page 147. Next, please. And then let's move to the next characteristic, which is field work. In ethnography, Fieldwork means that the researcher gathers data in the setting where the participants are located and where their shared patterns can be studied. This data collection involves the following. First is EMIC. EMIC is data of information supplied by participants in a study. EMIC often refers to first-order concepts such as local language and ways of expressions used by members in a cultural sharing group, according to Shawat in 2007, and an ethnographic study of a soup kitchen for the homeless, Miller, in 1998, interviewed and recorded stories supplied by Michael, Dan, and Sarah, and Robert, used quotes from this individual to construct their perspective. And then the second one is ethic. Ethic data is information representing the ethnographer's interpretation of the participant's perspective. Ethic typically refers to second-order concepts, such as the language used by the social scientist or educator to refer to the same phenomena mentioned by the participants. It's according to Shawat in 2007. In the soup kitchen study, according to Miller, in 1998, the author formed themes as their interpretations of participant data that represented how the soup kitchen worked. And then the last one is negotiations. Negotiation data consists of information that the participant and the researcher agree to use in the study. Negotiations occurs at different stages in research, such as agreeing to entry procedures for a research site and mutually respecting individuals at the site. Also developing a plan for giving back or reciprocating with individuals. Again, in the soup kitchen study, according to Miller in 1998, the author sought out a gatekeeper to gain entry, helped advocate for the homeless with funding agencies, and participated in serving lunches on a regular basis. Next, please. Okay, let's see the example of table. Popular forms of data collected by ethnographers. During fieldwork, the ethnographer uses a variety of research techniques to gather the data. In this table, we can see that which is a composite lace from Lee Compit and Central in 1999 and Wolcott in 2008 displays a mainly qualitative and a few quantitative forms of data collection. Of these possibilities, observation and unstructured interviewing are popular among ethnographers. Next, please. And then the fifth characteristic is description, themes, and interpretations. A description in ethnography is a detailed rendering of individual and scenes to depict what is going on in the culture sharing group. This description needs to be detailed and thick, and it needs to identify specifics. It serves to place the reader figuratively in the setting, to transport the reader to the actual scenes to make it real. This involves awakening the reader's sense through adjectives, nouns, and verbs that elicit sounds, sight, feeling, and smells. Next, please. And then how to do this characteristic. This is how we do it. The researcher must single out some detail to include while excluding others. It means describing events, activities, and places without veering too far from the actual scenes of attention, and the people who shared patterns need to be discerned. Next, please. For example, this feature, the board to narrow descriptions and the Goodman incident case study, which maps the descriptive passage in the study of gunmen on a university campus, according to Asmussen and Creswell in 1995. The researchers began with describing the town, then narrowing the description to the campus, and finally focusing on the classroom in which the incident occurred. Next, please. The next characteristic is context or setting. The context for an ethnography is the setting, situation, or environment that surrounds the cultural group being studied. It is multi-layered and interrelated, consisting of such factors as history, religions, politics, economy, and the environment. It's according to Fetterman in 2010. And this context might be a physical location, such as a description of the school, the state of the building, the color of the classroom walls, or the sounds coming down the hall. It may also be the historical context of individuals in the group, whether they have experienced separations or dominations, or are an emerging people who have arrived excited about their new land. It might be the social conditions of the individual, their long-time reunion to the built kinship, their status as a profession, or their earnings as geographic mobility. And then the last one is the economic conditions. Might also include income levels, working class, or blue-collar background, or the system of finance that keep the individuals below poverty level. Next, please. And then the last characteristic is researcher reflexivity. Reflexivity in ethnography refers to the researcher being aware of and openly discussing his or her role in the study in a way that honors and respected the site and participants. Because ethnographic research involves a prolonged stay at a site, researchers are concerned about their impact on the site and the people. They negotiated and try with the key individuals and planned to leave the site as undisturbed as they found it. As individuals who have a history and a cultural background themselves, they realize that their interpretation is only one possibility, and that their report does not have any privilege, authority over other interpretations made by readers, participants, and other researchers. It is important, therefore, for ethnographers to position themselves within the report and identify their standpoint or point of view. It's according to Since in 1997, they do this by talking about themselves, sharing their experiences, and mentioning how their interpretation shaped their discussion about the sites and culture sharing groups. And then being reflective also means that authors' conclusions are often tentative or inconclusive. leading to the new questions to answer. The study might end with questions that beg for answers or multiple perspectives or viewpoints for the readers to consider. Next, please. For example, one researcher who studied identity development of adolescent females through reading teen magazines, that's according to Finders in 1996, documented her role as follows. First, I did not want to be viewed as a teacher or someone in authority. And then second, I gained their trust so slowly and negotiated a relationship that did not fit their established patterns with significant adults. And then the last one is, on several occasions, a girl would not allow me to see a note that she deemed too absent. I did not report such incidents as writing on the restroom wall or faking illness to avoid an exam. Okay, I think that's all from my part. I give it back to the moderator, Miss Ilma.
Okay, Miss Rere, what a very clear presentation. And now go on to the last presenter, Miss Litani. Please, time is yours.
Thank you for the chance, Miss Ilma. Okay, next I would like to continue with the ethical issues in conducting ethnographic research. Ethical issues in ethnography come up primarily when doing field work, because it is there that issues arise in collecting data. According to Ryan, 2009, these challenges of field work involve first, negotiating how to get access to the people and sites being studied, and the second one, how long to stay in the field, whether to take natural talk or talk that we collect through interviews, or the last one is how to interact with participants respectfully. And then medicine in 2005 also devotes considerable attention to ethics in ethnography and summarized several areas of concern where ethnographers should be open and transparent about gathering the data. This means that they need to convey to all individuals involved in a study the purpose of the study and the general impact it will likely have. And the last one is the sources of support and funding for the project. And then the ethnographers also need to study people and places with a respect toward causing them no harm, preserving their dignity and ensuring privacy. Researchers and participants need to negotiate limits related to these factors. And then, ethnographers also have a responsibility to the scholarly community. This responsibility entails not deceiving or misrepresenting participants or readers. For example, fabricate evidence, falsify or plagiarize, or failing to report misconduct. Work in ethnographic settings should be conducted respectfully so that other researchers might not be barred from entering the site in the future. And then, ethnographers need to give back and provide remuneration to those being studied. This means casting remuneration in terms of what is fair and what the community being studied might require. Another way to compensate is to provide material assistance, for example, advocating for a group to a funding agency, in a way that reciprocates based on the needs of the participants. And the last one, ethnographers need to be aware of the potential negative influence their presentation and publication may have on the population they study. And then here are steps in conducting ethnography. So in 1980, Spratly, he advanced a 12-stage developmental research sequence, or what we call as DRS. And this is a highly structured approach, and it contains 12 steps. And the DRS steps begin with a wide focus from number 1 and until 6 years. Start from locating an informant, interviewing an informant, making an ethnographic record, asking descriptive questions, analyzing ethnographic interviews, and making a domain analysis. And then begin from step 7. This step narrow for intensive investigation of a few selected domains, such as asking the structural questions, making a taxonomic analysis, asking contrast questions, making a componential analysis, discovering cultural themes, and the last one is writing the ethnography itself. And the change in focus here suggests that both narrow and wide focus occur simultaneously, but with more emphasis on one or other at various stages of the research. And Creswell in 2012 considers a series of steps that represents a general template rather than definitive procedure for conducting an ethnography. The first step is identify intent and the type of designs and relate intent to your research problem. So the first and most important steps in conducting research are to identify why you are undertaking a study, which form of design you plan to use, and how your intent relates to your research problems. These factors need to be identified in all three forms of ethnographies and case studies. The intent of your research and type of problem you seek to study will differ significantly depending on your plan to conduct realist case studies or critical ethnography. And the second step, discuss approval and access consideration. In this step, all three types of design follow a similar procedure. You need to, first, receive approval from the institutional review board. And then the second one, identify the type of purposeful sampling that is available and that best answers your research questions, of course. And then third, locate a site for your research and then identify a gatekeeper who can provide access to the site and participants for the study. And the fourth, guarantee provisions for respecting the site and actively design in the study how to reproduce to the individuals at the site. This means that you will guarantee to disturb the site as little as possible and to follow good ethical practices such as guaranteeing privacy and anonymity, not deceiving individuals, and informing all participants of the purpose of your research. And the third step, use appropriate data collection procedures. The three designs have several common features here, with an emphasis on extensive data collection, using multiple procedures for gathering data, and the active involvement of participants in the process. And the fourth step, analyze and interpret data within a design. In all ethnographic designs, you will engage in the general process of developing a description, analyzing your data for themes, and providing an interpretation of the meaning of your information. These are typical data analysis and interpretation procedures found in all qualitative studies. However, the different types of ethnographic designs vary in their approach to these procedures. And the last step, according to Creswell, write the report consistent with your design. A realist ethnography is written an objective report on information about the culture sharing group. A case study may emphasize the detailed description of the case, and in a critical ethnography, the researchers conclude their reports with the critical issues that initiated the study and discuss how they, as well as the participants, have changed or benefited from the research. And this is the overview of steps used in each type of the design. Here you can see, and then this is still the same. And the last one is this one, evaluating an ethnography. The criteria for evaluating an ethnography begin with applying the standards used in qualitative research. Then specific factors need to be considered within ethnography properly. In a good ethnography, the researcher usually identifies a culture sharing group or case to study, and then focuses on a cultural concept, for example, power or acculturation, recognizing that this concept may be very broad. And the third one provides evidence to show how this group has established over time pattern of behavior, language, and beliefs. and then engage in field work and gathers the evidence through multiple sources including observation and interviews, and shows an analysis of this evidence through a detailed description of the culture sharing group and the context in which it exists. Themes that summarize major ideas about how the group works, and interpretation that suggests how the group illustrates a culture at work. And the last one, the researchers usually portrays the research as reflecting on their own role in the study and how their background, gender, and history shape the account that they report. And this is the conclusion of our presentation today. First one, ethnographic designs are qualitative research procedures for describing, analyzing, and interpreting a culture sharing groups' shared patterns of behavior, beliefs, and language that develop over time. And ethnography can be used for study of a group and culture sharing group study that provides understanding of a larger issue. Ethnography studies lies in cultural anthropology. It started from late 19th until early 20th centuries. Then it continuously developed until present time. These historical factors have led to three types of ethnographies: realist, case studies, and critical studies. A realist account is an objective account of a culture sharing group. It is written in a third-person point of view, reports on the information learned from participants, and places the researchers in the role of providing the final interpretation and presentation of the culture. Case studies focus on a program, event, or activities and provide a detailed description and analysis of a case based on extensive data collection. A critical ethnography is a type of ethnography in which the researchers advocate for groups marginalized in our society and focus on issues such as power and authority. And characteristics of ethnographic designs include cultural themes, culture sharing group, shared patterns of behavior, belief, and language, fieldworks, description, themes and interpretation, context or setting, and the last one is researcher reflexivity. And ethical issues in ethnography come up primarily when doing fieldwork, because it is there that issues arise in collecting data. A 12-stage developmental research sequence, or DRS, for conducting ethnography according to Berkeley 1980 are locating an informant, interviewing an informant, making an ethnographic record, asking descriptive question, analyzing ethnographic interviews, making a domain analysis, asking structural questions, making a taxonomic analysis, asking contrast questions, making a componential analysis, discovering cultural themes, writing the ethnography. And then steps for conducting an ethnography research according to Creswell 2012. First step, identify the intent and type of design and relate intent to your research problem. The second step, discuss approval and access consideration. The third one, use appropriate data collection procedures. The fourth one, analyze and interpret data within a design. And the last one, write the report consistent with your design. And in a good ethnography, the researcher first identifies a culture sharing group or case to study. Second, focuses on a cultural concept, for example, power and acculturation. Recognizing the concept may be very broad, and so they will be careful. And then the third one provides evidence to show how this group has established over time pattern of behavior, language, and beliefs. Engage in fieldwork and gathers the evidence through multiple sources including observation and interviews. Shows an analysis of this evidence through a detailed description of the culture sharing group and the context in which it exists. Themes that summarize major ideas and about how the group works, and interpretation that suggests how the group illustrates culture at work. And the last one, the researcher portrays as reflecting on their own role in study and how their background, gender, and history shape the account that they report. Okay, so I guess That's all from me, and I will give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you for the outstanding presentation from all the speakers today. So then this is the end of our presentation related to ethnographic design, and we are from group 4 wants to ask your apology if we have so many mistakes when we are presenting our topic, and also thank you for listening and paying attention to our presentation. The last say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.